Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I'm gonna get a little philosophical today and talk about selfishness. What is selfishness? Is selfishness bad, and why do we perceive it that way? I come from a family who I recently realized are all FE users. So as the only FI user, I have been called selfish since I was a child. Now that's become part of my inner critic voice. But is FI really selfish? There tends to be this conflict in the MBTI community between FE and FI. FE users think that FI users are selfish, and FI users think FE users are fake. So they are clashing against each other. FE and FI are judging functions, so they're going to clash much harder than perceiving functions would, such as like NE and NI are perceiving functions, so they are not going to clash as much as judging functions will. I think that FE and FI are among the top cognitive functions that have conflict against each other and clash the most. Part of that could be because of misunderstanding. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that and then get into selfishness in general. So approaching it from both sides, FE is extroverted feeling, so it is looking outward. It focuses on other people and their feelings first, and then their feelings and their selves. FI is introverted feeling, so it is focused inward. It focuses on the individual person's emotions and feelings first, then others. So you could say FI is self-focused. I feel like that would be accurate. But self-focused isn't really selfishness. Being focused on yourself could be in the terms of like self-care or just processing your emotions. I would not consider that the same as selfishness. The definition of selfish in the dictionary is lacking consideration for others, concerned chiefly with one's own personal profit or pleasure. So why don't we like selfishness? What is it about it that we don't like when we see it in other people? Well, judging from that definition, it would be people thinking about themselves to the point where it's like causing harm to other people in a way. Like they're only thinking about themselves and they will like throw you under the bus because they don't care about others as much as they do themselves. Sure, but let's say someone is mad at someone else for being selfish because they're not paying attention to other people, including themselves. Wouldn't that make them selfish because they want the other person to focus more on them than themselves? When it comes to the functions, FE and FI may be misunderstanding each other because they work in opposite ways. FE users are hardwired to think about other people first. So a lot of the time, it's not even a conscious choice. It's more like they're just doing what is socially appropriate. And, being nice to others, being giving, is what they consider to be socially appropriate. And that's just hardwired into them. Whereas FI users don't have a problem most of the time like asserting their needs and not necessarily thinking like, oh, I'm gonna be nice to someone because that's what I should do because that would be socially appropriate. Most FI users don't think that way. So when they do act selfless, it's genuine. When FI gives, it's more of a conscious choice, but they tend to follow their feelings on that. So they're giving when they feel like it, which, while genuine, may not be all the time. So it's not consistent. That may be why if an FE user is the one giving to an FI user, they have a problem with it because they see the FI user not appreciating what they're giving to them or not giving it back. The FI user honestly may not even fully notice what the FE user is doing. They're in their heads a lot and they just might be like, oh yeah, like giving, that's nice, and then like be off in their head somewhere. Because of those differences, that's part of why FE views FI as selfish. Another way that FE might view FI as being selfish is that FI doesn't always follow like society protocol. Like an FI user, if they went to a party, they would be like, okay, I'm ready to go home now, and just leave. Whereas the FE user might stay the whole time just because they feel like, oh, this is what the host would want. I'm gonna be like, doing what I think they would want, or something like that, or what is socially appropriate is to stay the whole time, to be polite or something. FI might not do stuff if they don't feel like it, and they might have needs and speak those needs. FI users don't always voice their needs, and sometimes they have a problem with FI users doing that because they feel like asserting their needs is like putting their needs before the group or something like that, which honestly usually isn't the case. Like having a different opinion or being like, I'm cold, can you turn the heat up or something, is not gonna like mess with any dynamics. Whereas the FE user might be like, well, the group isn't cold, why are you being like this? Like, calm down. But what is considered acceptable or not acceptable is largely determined by society. Even if people forget that or don't realize it, if our society rules changed, selfishness might be considered a virtue. And even in our society, where usually selfishness isn't considered a good thing, it has a bad connotation, yet our society in general is becoming more and more selfish. And even in certain areas, it's deemed acceptable, but not in others, such as the workplace. Like corporate offices can be very cutthroat, and to get to the top, people have to be selfish, and some people will do whatever it takes to level up, and that's considered expected in those kinds of work. So why is it acceptable in some places but not others? Work in general, I feel like you have to be selfish to a degree if you want to get a job and be successful. You have to put yourself out there against competition. Like imagine if you were at a job and you just like gave everything away to your coworker. Like, oh, coworker, you can have this raise. I'm being selfless. Oh, you can have this promotion. And then you end up fired because you were being selfless. Like, to a degree, society has dictated that like if we aren't being selfish, then we're not going to survive. And that brings me to self-preservation can be considered a form of selfishness. Survival of the fittest, or just survival in general. Like, if we were in a zombie apocalypse and a zombie was attacking you, are you gonna run out in front of them to protect some stranger, get bitten and die? Then you're gonna be dead. What did you gain from that? Now, you could be considered a hero, but like, was it really worth giving your life for nothing, basically? I mean, sure, like the other person might survive, they might not, but like, would you give your life to someone else, and why should you? The Bible says that humbleness and self-sacrifice will be rewarded, and selfishness will not. So if you're going by the Bible's terms, selfishness is not good. But does that mean all sorts of selfishness? This is a philosophical topic in some ways, at least the way my mind works, where I think deeply about a lot of things, including like the underworkings of society and stuff like that. Like, if you really think about it, like, why is selfishness a bad thing? Now, I would consider selfishness in the way that it is harming others would be bad. But selfishness that is not affecting others negatively I don't really consider that a bad thing. Like, I don't see why it would be bad. Like, do people have a right to be selfish? Should they be judged for that? Now, FE users can be selfish as well. Everyone can be selfish. It's impossible for people to have zero selfishness because that's just how we're made. We're individuals. We have individual wants. But it might come out differently in FE users than it might come in FI users. FE users can be selfish through passive aggressiveness, people pleasing, and keeping score on giving. People pleasing, I just read something the other day that made sense. Said that in a way it's manipulative because you're trying to manipulate people into liking you, and that's why you're doing nice things for them or saying nice things to them. It's not because you genuinely want to be nice to them, it's because you're expecting to gain something from it. So even giving in that way, a lot of FE users give, but they expect something in return, or they keep count. They may give to someone and then get passive aggressive when the other person isn't giving back. That's not selfless giving. Selfless giving would be giving without expecting anything in return, and giving like just because you want to, not because you want to like get something from them. So it may come in different forms, but everyone can be selfish. Now, I think I have a very strong self-preservation instinct because that is my instinct. If you're familiar with the instinctual variance, that is my primary instinct. That basically involves like feeling like you have enough of things and wanting to feel safe and like protect yourself, self-preservation. So I also am used to being alone. I don't depend on anyone to like, I don't know, like meet my needs and stuff like that, usually. So I'm like, no one's gonna do it for you. You have to do it yourself. So it's more of like, I'm gonna take care of myself. Everyone else can worry about themselves a lot of the time. Now, there are some people I care about that I would be like more giving towards. But like generally, I would need a good reason to go out of my way to like think of someone else, like just because. Like, I would not sacrifice my life for someone else. That's just me. And is that necessarily bad? No. What if someone was like a hermit and they lived in a house and they just like had all their supplies or whatever? They were just like, I don't care about anyone else. I'm just gonna live for myself. Is that bad? No, not really. Like, you can do what you want pretty much. Is that harming anyone else? Not really. They're like, keeping to yourself isn't really harming anyone. But something my ISFJ friend said, because we like had a discussion about this, was that like, yes, being selfish like that isn't necessarily bad, but you could be better. Selfishness may not be like the goal you should be aiming for, but all selfishness isn't necessarily bad. If it's harming someone, yes. If it's not, I mean, live your life. I mean, like, thinking about it like that, especially if there's people around you who like, you know, wouldn't do the same for you. Like, I feel like the logic would be like, why should you be selfless to them instead of focusing on yourself? Like, I guess that depends on like your ethics and your beliefs. Is FI selfish? Not as a function, no. FI users are not selfish. Individuals can be selfish. FI does have a predisposition towards being inwardly focused, that is true. So if they became increasingly self-absorbed, that could lead to some unhealthy things. FE users think they're being selfless, but they're giving with all these strings attached, which is a form of selfishness. So it goes both ways. And I'm not saying that like all of that, you know, is selfishness in general bad. What do you think about selfishness? Share in the comments below. If you like this video, check out some of my other videos. Subscribe if you like them. I will see you next time. Take care of yourselves. See ya.